Welcome back to Nix Vids. On this video I'm going to be reviewing the Kawasaki ZX6R 636 2003-2004 version, so it's the B1H. And yes, I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get started. Okay, so in this video I'm going to be going over the specs of the motorcycle just to start with. Then I'll be going over my initial opinions, because at the end of the day I've only had this bike for a month now, not even that, I think a few weeks. But yeah, so I'll go over that, my opinion on the bike. I'll let you know what I think it's mainly for, whether or not it can do some things and can do what things it can't do as well. It should be a good little video. At the end, I'm no expert when it comes to motorcycles, so I'm not going to know all the facts and figures. Okay, so the bike I'm sitting on right now is my new Kawasaki ZX6R 636 B1H. It is a fantastic bike, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over some of the specs for you, just list what you can find online. So, the engine size of this bike is 636cc, hence the name 636. It produces a whopping 818 hot brake horsepower, which is far more than I'm used to. So out of that 118 brake horsepower, the engine is able to do, or the bike is able to do, 165 miles per hour. I haven't hit that, and I don't imagine I ever will, but it is very capable of high speeds. And even though the torque range is quite high in the revs, you're looking at at least above 10k, looking towards 12k I think is the perfect torque period. The bike is quick, even though it does lack in the torque. But then you could say, even though the torque just kicks in a lot later, so actually saying the fact that there's not a lot of torque around here means I can control the bike quite comfortably in a higher gear around town, around through cities, without any issues. So the bike weighs about 174 kilograms dry weight, with an 18-litre tank. That will then add on a lot of weight to it, including oil, including coolant. But luckily, even though it is a rather heavy bike, because including all those fluids, it's probably about 200 kilos, it is low down. So you do have that comfort when coming to a stop. You're not worrying about toppling over because you're on your tiptoes. I'm about 6 foot, and I can easily flat foot this bike and still have bent legs. So it is very low to the ground, but take it into account if you are a shorter rider or even a taller rider. You may either look a bit funny if you're a bit taller, or if you're a bit shorter, you may be worrying that that flat foot is starting to get raised onto the ball of your feet. What are you doing? Oh, for fuck's sake, man. I did forget to mention that unexpectedly the bike is actually fuel injected rather than carb. You'd expect it to be fuel injected, carb, sorry, due to its age, but luckily, in my opinion, it's not. Okay, the bike has dual front discs. This allows for obviously higher braking force at higher speeds, which is a good thing. The rear is a single disc, obviously, with a single piston caliper. I think the brakes are fantastic on this bike, though please take into account the fact mine have actually been upgraded to braided lines rather than the stock. I'm assuming the stock rubber ones, so therefore my opinion of it is almost invalid due to the fact that I'm not testing stock lines. So just take that into account. Okay, now we've got the boring bit over of the specs. I'll just go into my opinion on the bike and just talk you through what I'm going to use the bike for and what I think the bike's capable of doing and not capable of doing. Okay, so my first impressions of this bike when I picked it up, you can watch me actually picking the bike up in the last video on this bike. Please feel free to go over there and have a look, but I'll go over it again once more. My first impression was heavy, but that is because I've gone from a WR450, which is a dirt bike and therefore weighs almost nothing at all, to this bike, which weighs a normal comfortable amount for a sports bike, and I just wasn't used to it. The weight is low down on this bike, so you don't notice it as much as anywhere near as much as other bikes. But for me personally, when I got on it, I felt it was just a little heavy. Again, like I said, it's just because I'm not used to it. That's just one of those things. The other thing was the turning. It's a lot harder to turn compared to a upright or wide handlebarred bike, because these are quite tucked in because they're meant to be tucking down the speed all the time. It does feel rather hard to turn at slow speeds and tricky to maneuver with the handlebars actually getting all the way into the tank, and you almost, the point that the handlebars lock is the point where your thumb touches the tank as well, which is, if you even look down, it's not that far. Another thought of the bike when I first got it was how goddamn beautiful it is, and generally I love the look of it. It's an older bike, so it's not as spiky as the newer ones, but I just love the style. I think it's way ahead of its time for 2003. One of the other things I realised when actually riding this bike was it is bloody quick. For a 600 it is quick. I've ridden naked 600s before and my old bike was restricted, I'll give you that, but even them, they're a lot torquier. They're tuned to be a lot torquier, but this thing is absolutely ridiculously quick, and I just wasn't ready for it, in all honesty. It scared the hell out of me, but now I'm more comfortable with it. I'm getting used to it and it's a lot of fun. Again, be aware that it's the kind of bike, it's not a road bike in the fact that how much actual power it has. It's more of a track bike, and it just blows my mind that this is only a 636cc compared to a 1000. It's nothing at all. So when getting on this bike, even though it may feel not very powerful low down, just be aware that once you get going, it wants to go. And if you do want to ride it fast, just make sure you get into that rev range. So if I'm going to accelerate from here, it doesn't have the torque as you want. So what you want to do is just drop down till your gear is in just about 7k mark, I'd probably say, and then as you open it up, anything above 9-10k is where you start entering torque, the power zone, and where the bike wants to be sitting if you want to ride it fast. So this bike is not meant for commuting. You can do it, you could do it. It's not like a dirt bike where you just can't do it. You could do it, and you could put a top box on it, I've seen it, and you can go touring, which is what I plan to do. I plan to go exploring on this bike. The ability to ride further now is so much better than on a dirt bike, which is at the end of the day why I got it. It'll happily sit on the motorway in a high gears, because it has 6 gears, a 6-speed gearbox, so you can sit on a high gear, low revs, and just cruise, as long as you take your weight off your wrist, which is one of the first things I had issues with, was my wrist hurting, because you're very hunched over, ready to go position. The bike is definitely not meant for around town though. When I was filming that first bit through Chichester, I was actually noticing the temperature gauge here rising quite a lot higher than usual. Considering it's about a 6 or 7 degree day at the moment, it's not going to go above the much, probably 9 tops, but it's a cool day, and I'm still getting 100 degrees out of the engine, or close to 100 degrees, and that's quite hot. I don't know what these running temperatures normally seems to be, but around these kind of roads it doesn't go much above 70, 80. So the bike at the end of the day is made for track days. It's made for hitting twisties like this, or country roads, long sweeping bends. It's meant for high speed riding at the end of the day. One of the other things I noticed is, if you do have a passenger, just be aware. I don't know if they were like this stock, but over the years, because this is a 17-year-old bike, over the years it has gotten to the point where the seat is very slippy. It's all right when you've been sitting on it for a while and you've given your arse time to warm up the seat and it starts sticking, but if you go out in the winter, it's at the end of the day, it's just very, very slippy for the pillion especially. It's a lot of fun, this bike. If anybody does think about getting one of these, they're obviously not too bad price wise. This one was 2,450 quid, I think, or 2,400 pounds, which is, to me, was a really good price for only 15,000 miles, which is what it's got at the moment, and I'm really happy with it. Okay, so if you were wondering if this bike could wheelie, you obviously don't know a lot about these bikes. I'm not going to prove it, because unfortunately I don't do that on YouTube anymore, and unless I can find somewhere private in the meantime. But the bike does wheelie. It's renownedly known as a stunt motorcycle to a large portion of the riding community. That's why people buy them, is to stunt them. And if you look on, if you type in 636 stunt bike, there is hundreds of them online. And yes, eventually this may become one of those. Okay, one of the last things I can say about this bike is it sounds awesome, even with the stock exhaust. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to open up the throttle and let you hear what it sounds like. See what I mean? It just sounds fantastic. I didn't want to open up too much because it is a wet day and I'm in a low gear, so I don't want to wipe out around these very slippy turns of mini Switzerland. Okay, thank you very much for watching Nix Vids. I hope you enjoyed this review of my new bike. Later on in its years, I'll probably do a mileage mark and let you know what's happened in terms of servicing and things like that. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon.